science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction. Fiction.
Centered salutations, Cognadocs. Welcome to Exofathom. I'm Mike, and last time I checked, it's Friday, but I'm not too sure. As always, though, I'm joined with my two lovely co-hosts, Nick and Ayla. Nick, how you doing?
Fantastic, man. Happy Friday to you.
It's Friday, yes.
It is Friday.
You were
Your
right.
suspicions were confirmed.
Awesome. Ayla, how you doing?
Oh, I'm okay. Yeah, I just had the most delicious meal, and I'd like everyone to know, because I did not know, that if you enjoy thin skirt steak and you don't have a grill, don't worry. You can cook it in a skillet and it tastes just as good.
I don't know why you ever thought that you had to grill it.
My parents only ever grilled it. They never cooked it on a skillet. So it just wasn't in the realm of possibility until today. So I'm very excited. This is a big day. Landmark.
Hey, I just learned something new, so.
I should Facebook that. Then in like 4 years, I can remember this day, this moment, people. It's big.
But you have to learn what a skillet is. It's another thing. Okay, anyway.
No, in 4 years. Gosh, I hope there's skillets, particularly iron skillets, which it's interesting. They have stood the test of time.
Oh, yeah. Cast iron is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's also my favorite weapon in TF2. Team Fortress 2. There we go.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like the Medea series, because I think at some point Medea uses a skillet.
I think in Tangled, too, she starts hitting people with a cast iron pan.
She does. Oh, my God. So many movies. It's a good weapon.
Yeah, just a bit heavy. So it's actually a good workout. Like the beginning of your skills, you just use a cast iron pan.
Okay, now I want like a self-defense class where it's just you got a skillet and you're just doing repetitions to try to like make sure that you can do it well. Oh, that's good stuff.
That's awesome. Well, my Friday's been pretty good. I had a delicious meal too. I had some 7-Eleven buffalo chicken rollers and some taquito cream cheese and jalapeno things.
Oh, wow.
Those are like my guilty pleasure of 7-Eleven foods.
Sometimes you need something that's just like a little like greasy or a little naughty to just be like, yeah, I'm alive.
The downside though is that now I have stomach pains, but it's worth it.
Worth it. Yep.
Totally worth it. So today I wanted to talk about a Buddhist principle known as the middle path. And not going to like an overview, but sort of just like a little section of it, I guess, like a little story. It's just 3 paragraphs, so it shouldn't take too long. So I think I'll just dive right in, and then we can kind of talk about, I guess, if you've had experience thinking about the middle path or using it in your day-to-day life. Sound cool?
Yeah, sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, just as the pure and fragrant lotus flower grows out of the mud of a swamp, rather than out of the clean loam of a upland field, so from the muck of worldly passions springs the pure enlightenment of Buddhahood. Even the mistaken views of heretics and the delusions of worldly passions may be the seeds for Buddhahood. If a diver is to secure pearls, he must descend to the bottom of the sea, braving all dangers of jagged coral and vicious sharks. So man must face the perils of worldly passion if he is to secure the precious pearl of enlightenment. He must first be lost among the mountainous crags of egoism and selfishness before there will awaken in him the desire to find a path that will lead him to enlightenment. There is a legend of a hermit who had such a great desire to find the true path that he climbed a mountain of swords and threw himself into fire, endearing them because of his hope. He who is willing to risk the perils of the path will find a cool breeze blowing on the sword-bristling mountains of selfishness and and among the fires of hatred. And in the end, will come to realize that the selfishness and worldly passions against which he has struggled and suffered are enlightenment itself. And I just really kind of dig those three paragraphs. I kind of get like weird Star Wars vibes, like I am a Jedi, like my father before me, and like tosses the saber. You know, he chooses not to strike, Vader down and things like that. But
Hmm.
what has your experience been with the middle path, or what do you think of that little, I guess, those three paragraphs?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. I really like it. It has like a nice calming circularity to it because as you read the first paragraph, my first little scribble was worldly passion equal mud bad question mark, and I was about to kind of raise this whole argument about the I don't know, the merits of worldly passion. But then in the third paragraph, he comes back to it. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom here. There's also a lot of like, not circularity, but kind of like that championing of the oneness.
Yes. Yep. Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I like, I've always liked the sort of philosophy of the middle path. I think my wife can tell you that it angers her sometimes, but
Wow.
yeah, we can get into the pratfalls of following the middle path and in a little bit. But I like the imagery. I like the imagery of climbing a mountain of swords. And if you think about it, the middle path being the edge of the sword itself, it's a balancing act where there's hazard on either side of you. And being able to trudge through the stuff and kind of, like, to me, it makes, pardon me. To me, what really impacts is the concept that in order to understand fully what the middle path is and the path towards enlightenment, you have to go through the muck. You have to kind of experience the muck because you have to understand what that is. And that kind of ties into the Buddha's sort of origin story, right? He was a prince that was sheltered from the world around him, and he decided to shed his wealth and trappings of wealth in order to sort of really immerse himself in life. And I think that that's kind of how you get to the middle path.
That mountainous crags of egoism and selfishness.
Mhm.
So I can hear myself on my headphones, and selfishness becomes a word that's hard to say.
100%.
Jeez.
It's all the
But no,
shush.
Yep.
Yeah, just trying to
I
be
know, like-
Navajo with that because so much of our language, it's like, so it's like anytime and yeah. Anyway, sidetrack.
No, it's all good. Like I dig the idea that like you must bounce back and forth, like oscillating, like a wave, before you can find that true path. But if you have the desire to find it, you will do everything, like walk on swords and throw yourself into a fire and just accept life. Like it kind of ties into that, like amor fati from like Nietzsche type stuff. Where you just end up loving your fate no matter what happens. And I know from experience from living, it's so much better to, of course, it's so much better to walk on swords than it is to walk on eggshells. Or
Yeah.
it can be more painful, but if you stay true to that path, you find this lotus flower of individuality through the mud that you experience.
I could even venture to say that perhaps the ultimate goal via the middle path is that you can walk through anything without ever actually, encountering it or interacting with it, like, so you could, walk the mountain of swords without cutting your feet. Because there's sort of bulletproofness that you get when you understand you understand how to walk the middle road, not letting your psyche swing from one side of the pendulum to the other, and just understanding where you could be in both of those extremes, and then deciding that you don't need to reject either of them, but integrate both of them.
Yep.
I kind of, yeah. These are all very interesting things. Yeah, gosh, you guys are saying a lot of really good stuff. So I think one thing I was gonna make a joke about was that it kind of feels like a rom-com when at the end of the movie the main person doesn't end up with another person, but they like choose to find themselves. And I think that's interesting because the idea of like walking on swords versus eggshells is what made me think about that, because I think of walking on eggshells as like a relational issue. And so in dating or whatnot, it's like you could walk on swords in the sense that like you're just willing to kind of say yes to whatever shows up. Or you can walk the harder path, which is to be like, nah, I'm just going to kind of do me for a little bit. And that's why it always happens at the minute you're not looking for something pops up. Or in the rom-com, you just quote, find yourself and that's it. But like, I don't know. That's kind of like a really weird associative thing. But does that resonate with either of you? Or
Look, I've been looking for someone to date for 20. How old am I? Wait, I guess
you've gone on dates though.
Well, my point is this: I think I found the person, and it's me, and I'm the one. So I'm just gonna marry myself.
There it is. No, okay, so like
Typical millennial.
Wait, does he
Just
count
gonna
as
live
a
my
millennial?
best life
He's
and
kinda
marry
young.
myself. Yeah. Yeah, no, he's a millennial. Yeah.
Oh, man, I was gonna try to throw myself in with Gen Z and just get like some years younger, get some years
Yeah,
shaved
right.
off that age.
Right.
No, but I think it is interesting though, because like I'm on a group thread with a couple of married ladies and a couple of single ladies, and it's just interesting because the advice that I would give a person one-on-one is not the same advice that I would give in that particular chat, because I don't want to, I mean, I want to be supportive, but the other thing too is I do realize that there is like you have to kind of embrace that aloneness in order to kind of hit that like neutrality, that middle path. I think that creates that like gravitational force. Not to say that like you aren't if you aren't, but because it's also situational, and right now is not a good situation. But
Yeah. Well, I think
if
you don't.
society's movies taught us anything, that's a conclusion.
Yeah, I don't know if you have to be alone in order to walk the middle path, but I think that it helps to have time to evaluate yourself for sure, and get to know yourself and all that stuff for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what. Sorry, you reminded me of what I was trying to get to, which is the idea that like all relationships end, right? Like this is still your life, and so it's like this weird thing where like whether it's death at like age 80 or something like that, or just a breakup, but like every story ends eventually. And so it's interesting that we put so much focus on that versus like self-development and kind of bringing it in.
And I do find it is it selfish to want to like to have a desire to find enlightenment? Because walking up a mountain of swords, one, doesn't sound easy or pleasurable, but you have to have like this intense desire to do it, and then to throw yourself into a fire also doesn't sound pleasurable, but you still need that desire to do it. And I find it like, is that selfish to have that desire in itself?
No, it's not selfish. It's socially untenable, but it's not selfish. I mean, I think there's a reason that like people who seek enlightenment have to go live in monasteries. It's because you need to finally curate the conditions in which you're able to find that sort of enlightenment, and that doesn't come out of normal everyday stuff. Now, the middle path can, and you can walk the middle path your entire life without ever seeing enlightenment. But like I think that it's not selfish. It's just socially untenable because you have to leave everything behind. enlightenment it has a great deal to do with a detachment as well. And so if you truly want to find your enlightenment, you have to basically let go of everybody and everything.
Yeah, but I still think you could be around people, right? Like,
Like the
so
other
you can
monks
walk,
in the monastery.
like the other monks in the monastery, not necessarily, but you can build a middle path with having two people that represent two extremes, right? And those two extremes can pull and pull you towards both sides, and you can kind of be that stoic force that just tries to see the union between those two people.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't have some sort of diactic sort of relationship with somebody that balances you, for sure. But I think that if we're talking about true enlightenment here in the purest form, I think that you have to really integrate detachment into your life. And once you do that, you're not going to hold very many social relationships. You're just not. People don't like detached people, like they don't like being around detached people. And so just kind of by intrinsically being that detached from everything, you alienate yourself. So I think that that's kind of one of the reasons that it's socially untenable, at least in its purest form. Now, as I said, you can find the middle path and walk the middle path your entire life, integrating both sides of your psyche, integrating the extremes of your emotions, and trying to find that middle ground in which you're able to be the eye of the storm. But as far as, I don't know, floating above the ground while you're meditating and being, having halos come out of your head, I don't think that happens in a society. I think it's too difficult to shuffle yourself from the social coils.
But wouldn't the truly enlightened be able to manage that?
It's not a matter of managing it. The true enlightened wouldn't have any social coils. The true enlightened person wouldn't have that stuff because they would transcend the need for social intimacy, social connection. They would reintegrate into the energetic, the energetic field of the universe. So
and that would
you'd be fun at a party probably for a little while, but you wouldn't have the spouse and kids at home.
That would push them away from society, or would society
Both.
Push the enlightenment?
It's like a magnetic repellent, I think, both ways. I think that the person drifts farther from society because they don't understand, or no, not that they don't understand, but they understand that society doesn't work in that modality. Like I was telling you, Ayla gets upset at me sometimes because I can, take that middle path, and sometimes it's not appreciated in our relationship. And I understand why, because I'm not expressing myself normally, because we swing from pole to pole in our normal social interactions with each other. And sometimes when you're not doing that, it becomes frustrating. And, so yeah, I can totally see where somebody who is really trying to integrate that so much into their lives would totally just alienate all the people around them.
Would you, kind of pushing it towards like just fiction and Star Wars, would you consider like the Jedi a group that walked the middle path?
No, the gray Jedi were. The Jedi were just fanatics on the other end of the spectrum.
They were just one extreme.
Yeah, they were the good extreme, and the Sith were the bad extreme. The gray Jedi knew how to integrate both aspects of the Force. So,
but I would say Jedi in society or the Old Republic, they were able to have social relationships.
Most of them were like, vagabonds and remote star systems, though. I mean, like, that's kind of
Nick's Star Wars knowledge.
No, I'm not necessarily. I'm not trying to like go Star Wars toe to toe. I'm just saying, like, if the middle path existed, then it would be
passionate.
Yeah, it would be gray Jedi, I think, for sure.
Okay. I would agree. I do disagree that I think that I disagree in the fact that I don't think you have to remove yourself from society or detach completely. Like I think it can be managed as a switch that you can turn on and off because enlightenment can come and go, right? It's just something you can let go and then gain back.
Not if you do it right. It's supposed to stay forever. That's why the Buddha dissolved into nothingness.
So there's a wrong way of doing it.
No, there's just a finality getting to the end point. So what I'm saying is that you can play within the parameters of the middle path and sort of switch your quote unquote enlightenment on and off, but you'll never reach the full enlightenment phase. And if that's okay with you, then that's fine. But the full enlightenment phase is the total detachment from everything worldly and the integration into the cosmic energy. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that you can totally, walk the middle path and play within those parameters and just not reach the final destination, which seems like a pretty good alternative to me. I don't want to demystify into the air.
I mean, that'd be kind of cool at the end.
I guess that if that was your final act, if you pulled a Yoda, then I guess that would make sense for sure.
And the turtle from Kung Fu Panda. He
Right.
dissolves into air too. I love that turtle. I really love him because he says, what is it? The past is in the past and the future is unknown. So you realize that the present is such a gift. I butchered that. Hang on. I'll find it. Hang on.
But what if there's no birth and death? Like,
What-
so
what
I'm just.
Let's see, you're mincing stuff because then, like, you have to get into reincarnation. Like, in this question you just posed, is reincarnation a thing? Are our souls ever evolving to a point of dissolving, or?
Well, I will just read you the teachings of Buddha as I have this book open. People habitually think of themselves as being connected with birth and death, but in reality, there are no such conceptions. When people are able to realize this truth, they have realized the truth of the non-duality of birth and death. It is because people cherish the idea of an ego personality that they cling to the idea of possession. But since there is no such thing as an ego, there can be no such things as possessions. When people are able to realize this truth, they will be able to realize the truth of the non-duality. So can you socialize yourself by realizing that there's no such thing as socialization and communicate? Just simply talk.
But then are you really living? That this is my whole point, and this is actually my biggest criticism of Buddhism is, okay, if you want to be a Buddhist, go sit on top of a mountain and live your life. I'm totally for it. I think it's a beautiful way to live your life, but you can't sit here in this third density existence and not dabble. You have to dabble in it. You can't just sit aloft on your mountain looking down at everything. It doesn't work that way. Or else you just be, as I said, you detach from reality. So I think that you definitely do have to you have to be in the physical world. This concept of sort of like letting go of your ego is all well and good, and those are the things that we should do, but the ego is also something that makes you at least in this iteration of yourself. If there's an eternal spirit, then that is something that's a quality of that's something different than your ego for sure. But at least in this current physical iteration of your existence, the ego is what you are. And as I said, unless you want to sort of transcend all the third density reality in order to sort of vault yourself out of it, then you kind of just have to experience it a little bit.
And I feel like in some ways, even that is an act of the ego, right? Wanting to be portrayed as enlightened or wanting to have these adjectives attached to your personhood so as to build that ego that you have. So first of all, the quote was Agwe. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why
they called it the present.
The present.
Oh.
Yeah. No, I remember when I first heard it, I was like, oh, I love it.
That sounds like something on Reddit's I'm 14 and this is deep. There's a subreddit dedicated to people who like find like really cheesy stuff that people like, swoon over.
Oh no, trust. I get like so much depth out of the stupidest thing. In fact, actually, there's a yoga tea. No, it's yogi tea. And the tea bag had a quote from an unknown source, but it's been like my quote for years, which is when you see the light in the world, you will be enlightened. Now, notice it doesn't say you will achieve enlightenment. It just says you will be enlightened. And I think that that's a really important distinction, especially in what we're talking about here, because I do find it a little bit interesting, the idea that the middle path does not lead to enlightenment. Nick, that's a cool distinction I'm going to look into a little bit more. But I also see like Mike's perspective where like, couldn't you dabble a little bit? And I would venture to say that, yes, you can be enlightened, but that doesn't mean you have enlightenment. And I think that the other caveat I wanted to mention that's kind of like informing the way I think about it is this idea that like we were all born for, all of humanity, not knowing why we're here, not knowing the nature of the cosmos. We were specifically born to be like without that knowledge. And so I think that in some regards, the point of living is to be in the dark about some of these things. Now, that being said, we can still intuit stuff, and depending on whether or not we accept the existence of a soul that is unique rather than something that's absorbed into the cosmos once we leave, those are also two different things that can inform the way you think about it. And so, yeah, I don't know, because I had a near-death experience, and it was very much losing the ego and being like, oh, this is totally fine. I'm like getting absorbed into some sort of like love vacuum. But then when I woke up again, I was like, that's freaking terrifying. It was like there was no me back there. So I don't know. I mean, like it's weird because
That's why it's a mentality that should only exist outside of the third density of reality.
Yeah, like in
Because
monasteries
it's not
or something like that.
Yeah, because
where
it's
you
not conducive to living a functional life. I mean, could you imagine being enlightened living in Los Angeles? I mean,
Sounds like
sorry, like
I'd
that
probably
would
be
just be
laughing a
murder
lot.
for your soul. No,
It
you wouldn't
just-
be. You wouldn't be laughing that much. I don't think. Seeing
Yeah,
all the
Oh, you
suffering
would. No,
and
you're
people
right.
everywhere.
I was thinking about silly people, but you're right.
Yeah.
So
There's suffering too.
what? So you actually bring up an interesting thing. I can make the argument that suffering is enlightenment, and as far as whether or not being egoless is good within this density and within LA, you can definitely get a lot of stuff done. It's productive, but you can also be taken advantage of very easily
Mhm.
because you're not going to have anything to defend yourself with because that's what you use to defend your like so the ego allows you to say no basically
Yeah, of course.
because even in the last bits of this paragraph, wrong paragraph. It says here, and dot dot dot, and in the end, will come to realize that the selfishness and worldly passions against which he has struggled and suffered are enlightenment itself. Now, the chapter that I'm pulling this from is the chapter called The Middle Way.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Right, but I mean, the end goal of Buddhism is to transcend suffering. You by accepting that suffering is existence. Existence is suffering.
Mhm.
Their whole mantra about life and reality is that this is all suffering. So what you need to do is just accept it all as suffering, and then you'll get to a point where you don't care about the suffering anymore. That's what it is. I mean, I know that that makes it really sound kind of cynical, but I'm just saying, like, like yes, you can find enlightenment through suffering, but not in the Buddhist sense of the word. In order to truly enlighten yourself in Buddhism, you have to transcend suffering, and it has to not hurt you anymore. And like that's something that I think that is not incredibly doable for a human being.
I mean, I always wondered, like, if I ever get sent to prison and I'm there for a long time, would I end up reframing it like a monastery, right? Like you wake up, you have your food, you meditate, and
Get beaten for
structuring
an
the day.
hour with a bar of soap and a sock.
Well,
Yeah,
that shouldn't
sure.
happen, but yes,
Well,
no, I
But it
know.
does.
Yes, I know.
Depends on the country.
Yeah, but I mean, like, in the sense that, like, that would be technically you don't want that to happen. That is like one of the pinnacles of suffering in society today. And so I wonder to myself, like, and I guess maybe I watched Shawshank Redemption again recently, and I was just thinking about like the concept of passing time, of being stuck in a position and trying to be like, well, do you make the most of it? Do you bathe in how much it sucks? Like, do you vacillate between one and the other? Do you ever emerge and become like one solid state about things? Because I feel like, while I think that I could probably adapt and try to be like, okay, I'm just gonna try to just meditate most of the time and just really go inward, I'm sure I would have bad days too. And so on the bad days, I might ask myself, wow, did I waste all that time because I thought I was enlightened, but here I am. And I think that comes part and parcel with a lot of this, where it's like you do fail, you can try and you fail. But again, I wonder, like, if reincarnation is a thing, then the idea would be that like your soul's suffering through this lifetime, but you're realizing it and catching yourself more frequently than you did in the last lifetime, so that in your next lifetime you do it less frequently.
Yeah, well, and
Which I don't know, that could be like a really, like, I don't know, DMV kind of way that I've been thinking about it, but that's kind of how, like, I wonder some schools of thought might go.
well, I mean, I don't know. I think that if we can make a distinction between this sort of like on-off switch of what we call enlightenment and what I'm saying, which is the final destination, then I think then we'll be fine, because I think we're talking about two different things. I think when I say like the middle path, it is the road to enlightenment. It's not the destination. It's not the way. It, like, you can drive to about 5 feet from enlightenment, and you can just stay there for the rest of your life. Consequently, subsequently, you can go, drive 10 miles away from enlightenment and live that way. But the moment you cross that line that is enlightenment, you cease to be in this dimension.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I mean, is that yes, you can hop on the road of the middle path anytime you want, and you can drive closer and closer to enlightenment and drive farther away as much as you want. But once you cross that finish line, that's like, okay, well, now, they're your Sifu, from Kung Fu Panda,
Yeah. So, what would you say if I said enlightenment has no definite form or nature by which it can manifest itself? So, in enlightenment itself, there's nothing to be enlightened. Enlightenment exists solely because of delusion and ignorance. If they disappear, so will enlightenment. And the opposite is true also. Delusion and ignorance exist because of enlightenment. So when enlightenment ceases, ignorance and delusion will cease also.
Well, yeah, because when you're enlightenment, you don't have enlightenment, because it's thought everything. Once you cross that finish line, everything dematerializes. Words don't mean anything. The reality doesn't mean anything anymore. You've literally crossed the point of no return. It's like getting shot into a black hole. You're
Which
getting
honestly,
how is
that-
departicleized and then shot out somewhere else into a different dimension. So yes, you won't have like enlightenment, because you'll be past it. It's gone. Everything is done. You've made it. Congratulations. You've reabsorbed into nirvana, and you're good. And you don't have to worry about this like concept of, oh, am I enlightened? Because only somebody who says that they're enlightened is truly not, because anybody who's enlightened wouldn't have to say that.
So
I get
wouldn't
it.
enlightenment just be an atheist's death?
No, because you're going to
Nothing.
nirvana.
Yeah, but it's nothing. I mean, right? Like, I don't know.
It
If
isn't
nirvana
anything
is
in
like
the sense. It isn't anything in the sense that you have transcended a place in our reality in which you don't have any more judgment about anything.
I don't know. It kind of sounds to me like atheist death, and it's trying to be all packaged up cutely, but I'm not buying it.
I
This
would
is why I
say
trend towards hedonism. I'm like, I'm going to enjoy my worldly passions because no big higher up told me that like what's going to happen. So at least I got mine this lifetime. So
well,
if I obliterate into nothingness, I don't care. At
I would
least I
say
lived.
you should be on guard against thinking. Well, I wouldn't say this. The Buddha would say this. Be on guard against thinking of enlightenment as a thing to be grasped after, lest it too should become an obstruction. When the mind that was right, too many pages to turn at once.
I love the sound effect. He's not really reading, guys. That's just no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. When the mind that was in darkness becomes enlightened, it passes away. And with its passing, the thing which we call enlightenment passes also.
Mm-hmm.
As long as people desire enlightenment and grasp after it, it means that delusion is still with them. Therefore, those who are following the way to enlightenment must not grasp after it. And if they gain enlightenment, they must not linger with it. When people attain enlightenment in this sense, it means that everything is enlightenment itself as it is. So those hedonistic things that you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
well,
I'm walking the path.
that I've experienced, yeah, you're walking down the path and it just sort of pops up and goes, "Hey, what's up?"
Hey, I told you, I'm only trying to be enlightened. I don't need enlightenment. I'm just trying to see the light in the world.
Therefore, people should follow the path to enlightenment until in their thoughts, worldly passions and enlightenment become identical as they are.
Hey. So
So
as
that-
long as I'm thinking about it the right way, I could just like chug 20 beers and be all right. No, I'm just kidding. I could
Well,
never.
this is kind of pointing at one of the issues with the philosophy is that you have, Buddhist monk priests that have giant mansions in third world countries where people live in straw huts because they have reached enlightenment, and so now their frivolous spending and their exotic lifestyle is just a part of that enlightenment. This is what I mean, is that you cannot live in this sort of mentality or this realm in the third density reality that we live in, because you have these Buddhist monk people who live in giant palatial mansions, drive, Ferraris and Lamborghinis and have gold toilets because they claim to be enlightened. Now,
Sure.
whether that's true or not is up for debate, and I would venture to say that it's not true, because a truly enlightened person perhaps wouldn't do that type of thing. But that's the way in which enlightenment is not in this sort of strata of reality. It's just above us. And so I think that that's why it doesn't exist well in this density.
They may also be in the middle, though. Like, if Ayla chugs 20 beers, I chug 40 beers, and Nick has a single beer, Ayla's technically walking the middle path of chugging beers. Right? And so if that Buddhist who has that mansion and that golden toilet and all that is compared to somebody that owns a planet, compared to somebody that owns a galaxy or something, and compared with somebody
Well, when we find somebody, then I guess we can compare them to that. But at least in this current situation, they're living like Jeff Bezos when there's basically Haiti outside.
Do you want to hear something that's absolutely nauseating?
What?
Do you know the clothing brand Tommy Hilfiger? Is that still around or something? Okay. So there was a TV show back in like the 90s, and it was with Tommy Hilfiger's daughter and like her best friend. And so they're rich and they don't do anything. And they're really vapid and they love themselves, which is good, but like they love themselves in the way that's really cringeworthy. And so anyway, they're sitting out having a tan at some spa one day. And the girl looks over to the other one and goes, "Man, do you ever think about like such great people we were in our past lives? Like to deserve all of this, we must have been so good."
Yeah.
And I just was like ready to vomit all over myself, because I just thought that was like the most nauseating thing, whether she was doing it for the television or not. Like if that's how you truly think that, and like you're absolved of any responsibility to like be of use in this world. I mean, I guess I shouldn't judge, because no, shouldn't judge other people. But
Well,
I
it was
like
obviously a
it.
gross thing. That's why they put it on TV. They
Yeah.
wanted you to reel after it. Yeah.
Well, and then
I
like
don't-
worse so like years later, I was hosting Somali Mom. She's like an activist that frees children in Cambodia who are in like basically they've been sold into sex slavery. And she helps liberate them and gets them jobs and therapy and she helps them. But the thing is that like she has to go in and like basically convince them that they don't deserve their lot in life because they were brought up being told like, well, you're paying off your karmic debt, you're paying off your family's debt, like you deserve to be here. And I think that's a really damaging twist of a really beautiful religion. So for whatever that's worth, I just think like, yeah, there's definitely merit in ascribing to a faith or something like that, but also like, I don't know, having like that internal compass to also be self-preservationist about it too.
And it's because religions and the ideas of religions and ideas surrounding religions are actually too sophisticated for us. We don't fully appreciate them, you
I
know.
have to say, people in divinity school are amazing conversationalists. Like anyone I've known that's gone to divinity school has been the most amazing person to talk to because you're right. It's all of this stuff is so complex. Like you could go to church on Sunday every day for the rest of your life, but you're only scratching the surface of
Mm-hmm.
the volume that's out there.
Well, and that's why I like, Buddhism and stuff like this. And, I am only being argumentative because these are things that I have struggled with in my head for the past like 15 or so years when I first picked up the Dhammapada. I was huge into all this stuff and I really appreciate a lot of it. And I love the middle path. I mean, like I try to be on the middle path at all times, as much as I can be. It does hinder interpersonal relationships though sometimes. And that's something that I kind of struggle with because I think that, in the purest sense of what we would call, the enlightenment, it really does make sense why the Dalai Lama, which is probably the closest thing we have to human enlightenment, is plucked from his family as a child and made to live as a monk for his entire life. Subsequently now he drives like a Lamborghini and Rolls Royce and stuff. So, but anyways, yeah.
No, I think that struggle is good. I would say that process of struggling is enlightenment. I don't also think there's anything inherently good or evil about what people say. Their actions, of course, may be different. That's where I can get a little bit more Christian in my mindset, where I can feel a certain sort of way where I want to like drop a righteous sword on somebody.
Yeah.
Grab that sword from that mountain that I've been walking up and just like boop.
Right.
But I think it's useful in the very least to obviously discuss it and argue it, because that's the struggle. That's that middle way. And interpersonal relationships are important, but I can also see where we may put a little bit too much value into it. Like,
hey. I was just about to get some extra hugs tonight. No, I'm just
kidding. No, I definitely
like
agree.
If that's like fucking up your day of like what people on TV say, then you may be putting a little bit too much value into what those people on the TV say. And I even found myself feeling this way earlier today when I was watching a conference and I started to get passionate and like yelling at my phone pretty much. I'm like, why the hell I'm not even at this conference, first of all. And then secondly, like I'm an idiot. So why am I even thinking about this? But
yeah,
like where this good and evil stuff can kind of get tricky is like you look at something currently happening like GameStop. We're in the market. They're like, greed is good. You should push all the greed into it. And it's like all of a sudden the message gets flipped where it's the retail investor doing well with the greed and these big hedge funds kind of messing everything, like missing a step. And they're like, whoa, wait a second. This isn't what we thought was good. This is not, this is an attack on the wealthy, I think is my favorite thing I've ever heard.
Oh yeah, that was wonderful.
This is the market. Like if that's the game, like what are you doing?
I also kind of crack up
The
at
big
that
man.
too, because it's like how many countless numbers of small businesses have gone under, but one hedge fund, like, oh no, like
Yeah, my favorite response is just give them $600. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll help them. But no, I get what you mean, Mike. And honestly, I think that there's a huge benefit, especially within yourself and like in introvertedly, I guess.
I'm not looking to be agreed with. Like I want the disagreement. I want
no. But I'm saying I genuinely agree because this is something that I think about too. The middle path is best, I think, utilized within yourself and not necessarily tried to force upon others. Not that it ever is like something that they say you should do. Obviously, you shouldn't do that. But I think its best utility is really with managing yourself and within the parameters of your poles and knowing where you can swing from one direction to another. Being able to walk that middle path is really good. I think what I do lament is that if you do that, you tend to become not frustrated, but as I said, you become kind of otherized by a large proportion of people who don't practice that as well. And I think that becomes a bit difficult to deal with.
Yeah, but you also get the opportunity to screw with a lot of people, and that's a lot of
Certainly, yeah, you could definitely do that. Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, like it's like levitating about 6 feet from 6 inches from the ground. Like that's kind of like the way I see it. It gives you a huge benefit in the sense that you can, if you're the eye of the storm, everybody else can be flipping their shit, and you can still remain, within your groove. And being able to control yourself in times where emotions should be swinging erratically from left to right is inherently an advantage for you in your life.
And I think to also being able to know when and where you should swing your weight around, be able to like pull that emotion out and use the ego and use the kind of the lower density things to make a rhetorical point to persuade somebody. I think is extremely useful. And you're right where it's like you can't become too detached where you can't navigate the waters of conversation.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of dive into your ego a little bit too much and overcorrect.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And go a little too far and then bring it back to the center.
Right.
And that I think is like the advantage of at least exploring the middle path. Like you may never find enlightenment in the truths because it's an elusive thing as we've talked about so far. But
even like in your quote that you were saying, it's enlightenment should never be the end goal. If you're on that path, don't even think about it. Because it just may, like Ayla was saying about relationships, it may just pop up when you least expect it.
Indeed. Very, very true. So I do want to start to wrap this up with like just one little final reading. But if we have any final remarks to close this talk, I guess, and then I'll read and then we can have remarks on that. Or should I just read first and then have closing remarks? Okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry about time. It's Friday. We're hanging out. Sorry, guys, listening. We usually cut it at 45, but...
Well, I'm also running out of this beer, and I really want another beer, and I don't want to put the conversation on pause to run to my mini fridge and grab another beer. But I do have a bottle of wine that I could probably just uncork. And just
it's all
wine. Dude,
it's okay. We're already going.
It's called 19 Crimes by Shiraz, or it's a Shiraz from Australia called 19 Crimes. It's like $10, so it's cheap, but it's delicious. And I love it.
Wow, it took me a long time to decipher what you were talking about because I heard Shiraz, but I also heard Sherlock, and then 19 Crimes I think influenced that, and I was like, why are we talking about Sherlock? What's happening here? I was about it, but
actually I'm cosplaying right now as Sherlock Holmes. So that's
very cool.
No.
I just pictured your old little dog as like Watson. It's got like a little cape.
It's Watson's dog. I've been experimenting on it. So to those who choose the path that leads to enlightenment, there are two extremes that should be carefully avoided. First, there is the extreme of indulgence in the desires of the body. Second, there is the opposite extreme that comes to one who wants to renounce this life and to go to an extreme of aesthetic discipline, torturing one's body and mind unreasonably. The noble path that transcends these two extremes and leads to enlightenment and wisdom and peace of mind may be called the middle way, or as I called it when I pitched this episode, the middle path. And that's just what I wanted to close with. And if you have any closing remarks.
No, that's well said. I think it ties a nice bow on it, and I think that there's a good distinction between finding that harmony, because that's the way I like to think of it as well. Is like harmony. If you're thinking in music, you want to be able to have sympathetic notes overlapping to create this larger note. And to me, the middle path is just all about the balance and the harmony, and you don't want to float away, and you don't want to become too ego driven. You want to kind of just find somewhere in between there.
For sure. Ayla?
Yeah, I like the middle path. Nick's referring, I mean, we've known each other. Well, let's see. We've been romantically involved for what, like almost 10 years this year, I think. Is it 9? Is it 10?
10. No. Well, it'll be 10 this year. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So you get to know people real well. And it's funny because I remember when we first were dating, I was very much like, what is this middle path? Like, come frolic in the woods with me, literally. Or like sometimes I'll say, oh, you need to laugh more. But then, like I also feel grief much more deeply too. So I think in my personal involvement, I've been noticing how like there's these vacillations that can happen, some like, and I'm asking myself, like, is it required to feel the lows as low as I do in order to feel the highs as high as I do? Or is there merit to this middle path? But then when something really joyous happens or something really tragic happens, how long do I let myself feel that? Should I feel that? And this is actually something I was wondering today. And this is probably a question for another time. But it was also like, in this current moment, we're all based in Los Angeles. So there's a lot of death that's around us and sad news. And it's weird because the inclination for me, at least, is to try to carpe diem. If there's death around, I want to seize every day, make the most of every day, live my best life, right? But there's also this concern, like, is it appropriate given what's going on? And I think that belies a little bit of that duality, a little bit of that struggle, which shows to me the merit of walking that more just calm, moderate middle path and all that good stuff. So it's definitely something I'm sifting out. And to anyone listening, if any of what we talked about resonates, do drop a comment. I feel like there's a lot of people out there, going inward. And so we can do it together, and nobody knows the answer. So it's always good to keep asking the questions.
And for me, I am a man of extremes. On one end, I enjoy the crazy indulgence of like the notion of an orgy ethno-state on one hand. And then I enjoy the extreme notion of self-flagellance in like the very Christian sense on the other hand, and the extreme middle of just detaching from everyone and meditating for like a good 4 hours. That's also fun. So you can like
have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah, right. That's all I'm trying to do with life. That doesn't seem like a problem at all.
I mean, sometimes you do need the extremes to understand the middle. I'm a little older than you. You could be in 6 years. Well, I don't know how much. I don't want to get into it, but I don't know why it's at 6. But no, I'm just saying that, like, you're right. Like sometimes, actually, I heard this the other day. Baby otters, engage in risk taking because like so they're not predator aware. This is like some book, but yeah, so they don't know about sharks, so they go into the waters and they're like, yay, sharks, and they have to experience the dangers of a predator in order to learn to be wary of the predator. So so in some ways this risky behavior or extreme behaviors, it's a way that we learn too. So if the middle path is some sort of form of knowledge accumulation, then it makes sense that you would need to experience things to really test the waters and kind of know what's what and move through the world with
Yep.
knowledge.
And if you're, it's true, and knowledge that hopefully builds a bridge towards wisdom. If you're, I found this book in one of those find it, take a book, leave a book things. So if you're ever driving around or walking around, you see one of them, just peek in there and see what the hell's in there. You never know. And that's all I got.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Mike. That was a great conversation. Thanks for bringing that to us. I'm sure we can have another conversation about the philosophy of Buddhism and stuff a little bit more in depth. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, man, I've had a frog in my throat all show. I'm so sorry, you guys. Please let us know what you think. How do you feel about the middle path? And any other feedback that you might have. Other than that, I want to say thank you to you guys for listening. And we'll be back Monday night. I think that's going to be Ayla's show so stay tuned for that. And yeah, thanks so much, you guys. Thanks, Ayla. Thank you, Mike. And until next time, you guys stay out there, and we'll catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.